Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Just give a quick few seconds for everybody to get into the webinar. My name is Louis. I'm one of the creators or founders of Active and Thriving. By background, I am a physio for the last 12 years, working in public and private health, coaching people around behaviour change and improving their health and wellbeing. We're very happy to welcome you into the first Wellbeing Wednesday for this year. So we're going to do this once a month. It's a webinar for you to jump into on a new topic each month. And we're going to be able to go through some good quality info about the topic and give you some takeaway actions. We're going to try and make everything really practical so that you can walk away with a few things that you can start doing straight away. I'll introduce Josh, who's one of the other founders. I think we've got our names back to front somehow, Josh.
Yeah, I think we broke Zoom, setting ourselves up. Yes, as Louis mentioned, I'm Josh. I'm one of the co-founders of Active and Thriving and exercise physiologist. So I've spent the last 12 years working internally for corporates, running their health and wellbeing programs, doing health coaching, and everything in between. So really excited for this burnout session. I think it's something that's pretty relevant to a lot of people in some way, shape or form over the last 2 hours. And we do want to make all of these Wellbeing Wednesdays nice and interactive. So you'll see a big QR code up on the screen. So if you scan that, that'll get you into Menti, or you can go to menti.com and type in the code. And that way you'll be able to engage in some of the activities that we do throughout the next 30 minutes.
Great. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about burnout, which is a very hot topic, judging on the last couple of years that everybody's been through. So we're going to talk about what burnout is and how it's come about, particularly in the last couple of years, to be more of a recognised syndrome. We're going to look at the definition and the guidance from the WHO, who have started to put out a lot more content on this. We're going to explore the difference between stress and burnout and look at the 5 stages, which I think you'll be able to relate to at least a couple of them as we go through this presentation. I'm going to dig into the signs and symptoms of burnout, look at what causes it, particularly focusing on workload or work burnout for this presentation. We're going to look about what you can do for it, and then just touch quickly on some recommended readings of both inside the A&T platform and also a couple of books that come highly recommended on the topic if this is something you want to explore further. There's a bit of content here, so we might just keep moving quickly. So first one, let's just get some definitions down. So burnout, what is it? Burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. As stress continues, you begin to lose your interest and motivation that led to you to take on a particular role in the first place. Over the last several decades, the concept of burnout has been debated among industry professionals. In 2019, the WHO provided clarification, classifying burnout as a syndrome that stems from an occupational phenomenon. A syndrome is a recognizable group of symptoms and physical findings which indicate a specific condition for which a direct cause is not completely understood. This is different to a medical diagnosis, where a medical diagnosis has an understood cause. Who stated that burnout is believed to be caused by chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Burnout syndrome originated in the 1970s from an American psychologist, Herbert Freudenberger. It was first used to describe medical professionals, and a lot of research has been done in the healthcare space. They felt that they were burnt out from high workload, and the term later evolved to include working professionals experiencing exhaustion and an inability to cope with daily tasks. Of course, COVID-19 has magnified burnout, especially among healthcare workers. Indeed, a job website that focuses on employment surveyed 1,500 workers across various industries last March and found that burnout increased by nearly 10%, 52% in 2021 compared to 43% before the pandemic.
All right, thanks for that definition, Louis. So we're going to kick off with our first Menti activity. So again, if you haven't jumped onto Menti yet, you can see the details at the top of the screen. And the first question is, have you or someone you know experienced burnout recently. So we're going to go into more detail about signs and symptoms of burnout, but it would just be great for your overall impression, see what you think. What about you, Louis? Have you experienced it, or has somebody you know experienced it?
So before doing a bit more research into this space, I wasn't completely across it, but now going through and reviewing the 5 stages, definitely feel like there was a time when I was previously living in Melbourne through one of the very long lockdowns and working across a couple of jobs that I definitely went through a couple of the stages of burnout where just lost motivation, lost interest, and really just chronically fatigued at that particular time. So now looking back on it, I can recognize it a lot easier and put my hand up to say that, but at the time I didn't really recognize it at all. I think we had daily conversations and you probably saw a little bit of it going on, but hindsight's always a bit easier to understand, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And thanks for sharing that, Louis. And it was, we were chatting about it yesterday, it was pretty apparent to see the decline in not just yours, but other people that we're interacting with through Active and Thriving in Victoria and in other places through lockdown, through that period where, yeah, just the almost like the spark and enthusiasm for what people do just drifted away. And that seems to be consistent with what's coming through on the Menti here, Louis. So 20 people have reported that, yes, they believe that they have experienced it recently, 10 people they know, and then 4 not sure. So hopefully by the time we get through the end of this session, you'll be more clear on what burnout is and what burnout isn't as well.
Yeah, huge numbers. And that really is reflective in a lot of the global statistics as well. And amazingly, there's some really interesting stuff, particularly about Australia. So a global study by Attico revealed that Australian workers are amongst the most burnt out in the world in the last 2 years. More than half, 53%, saying they've suffered from burnout over the past year. This is ahead of Italy on 49%, China 41%, and Canada on 40%. And another study commissioned by Asana, which is a workplace platform, they found that of 2,103 Australian and New Zealand workers surveyed, they had 77% suffered burnout in 2020, which is a pretty alarming statistic. This is 6% above the global average for that year. So overall, it's estimated that burnout costs the Australian economy 14 billion a year, which is just absolutely massive when you think about it.
Lou, I'll just jump in before you keep going. Just if anybody's, a couple of people have messaged saying that they're having trouble utilizing the Menti, so menti.com and the code up the front. Try logging out and logging in again. Otherwise, feel free to engage in the chat as well, and I'll monitor that.
So burnout isn't the same as stress, and that you can't cure it by taking an extended vacation, slowing down, or working fewer hours. Stress is one thing. Burnout is a totally different state of mind. Under stress, you still struggle to cope with pressures, but once burnout takes hold, you're out of gas and you've given up all hope of surmounting obstacles. When you're suffering from burnout, it's more than just fatigue. You have a deep sense of disillusionment and hopelessness, that your efforts are in vain. Life loses its meaning and small tasks feel like you're hiking up Everest. Your interest and motivation dry up and you fail to meet even the smallest obligations. Stress comes and goes. It's not as challenging to manage. We can typically pinpoint it to a particular situation or a person. Individuals who are stressed out can imagine feeling better at some point once everything is under control. One of the first things you should know about burnout is that it can be extremely difficult to detect because it comes on subtly and progresses gradually. We don't become burned out after a couple of rough days. And unlike being stressed, burnout feels like there's no hope. It's when your old you has disappeared and you're left with a burnt out physical residue of yourself. Because burnout and stress in our careers are different, we need respective interventions at an appropriate time for each one. It won't help if you're not accurately identifying and anticipating the difference. What you can see on the slide there is the stress curve. So a little bit of stress is quite optimal for performance. It makes us do things. This webinar coming up, there's a little bit of stress to create the content and deliver it. So that gets you in the zone to actually deliver what you need to. Too much stress pushes you down the other side of that curve and then into the burnout zone, which is right at the end of that point.
All right, we're going to move on to the next activity. And what you'll see here is sliders that you can access based on the main causes of stress. So now I want you to think about each of those categories there and then slide the slider across based on either no stress or stay on the far left-hand side, high levels of stress or maximum stress. You'll drag it over to the right and we'll just see what's giving people stress, I guess, in the audience today. So appreciate you jumping in and on to Menti again and giving this activity a go. Just want to let everyone know also that all of these sessions will then be uploaded to the Active and Thriving platform in the library section, so that you can access them or share them with colleagues on demand after the fact as well, knowing that timing is everything.
So we're getting some results coming in, Josh. So far, daily life and busyness is leading the pack from work.
Okay, that's quite interesting. We've all got a lot of things going on. We do know that the top three is typically financial concerns, work, and then health concerns. But obviously it's a continuum and it does change based on the here and now, what's going on in your life. So we'll let a few more results come through.
It's interesting to see how this might have changed over the last 2 years, Josh, particularly with more of a remote working culture and just how much daily life and busyness has really kind of blurred the lines, particularly for people who are working from home.
Absolutely. And just thanks to everybody that's jumping into the chat who might not have been able to access the Menti. So the things that are coming through again are parenting with a triple exclamation marks. I think that's got a fair bit of weight there. Daily life and business, work as well.
Thank you for that. So we're going to go through the 5 stages of burnout. I'll give you some examples for each one. So these were first classified by Winona State University in Minnesota in the US, but prominently feature throughout burnout research. So the first stage is called the honeymoon phase. When you undertake a new task, we often start by experiencing high job satisfaction, commitment, energy, creativity. It's especially true in a new job. Of the beginnings of a new business venture. In the first phase of burnout, you may begin to experience predicted stressors of the initiative that you're undertaking. So it's important to start implementing positive coping strategies such as taking practical steps to support your well-being alongside your professional ventures. The theory is that we can create good coping strategies in the honeymoon phase and continue to stay in this phase indefinitely. The second stage of burnout is the balancing act. It begins with an awareness of some days being more difficult than others. You may find your optimism waning, as well as notice common stress symptoms affecting you physically, mentally, or emotionally. This should be a warning bell and a time to start enacting a plan. The third stage is chronic stress. This is a marked change in your stress levels, going from motivation to experiencing stress on an incredibly frequent basis, more days than not. You may also experience more intense symptoms than those in stage 2, particularly in physical, mental, or social well-being. The fourth stage is crisis or burnout, entering stage 4 itself, where symptoms become critical. Continuing as normal is not often possible in a state of burnout, and it becomes increasingly difficult to cope. We all have our own unique limits of tolerance, and it's key that you seek intervention at this stage. And finally, the last one is enmeshment. It's the final stage of burnout. This means that the symptoms of burnout are so embedded into your life that you likely experience a significant ongoing mental, physical, or emotional problem, as opposed to occasionally experiencing burnout throughout your life.
So those 5 stages, Lou, are you able to just confirm where the research came from for this?
Winona State University in Minnesota.
Thank you.
So thinking about that and thinking about your experience over the last 12 months, we're just going to get you to start suggesting to us what you think the signs and symptoms of burnout are, thinking about it from a physical, mental, work point of view, social. Let us know, typing in through the Menti presentation, what you've noticed in others or what you maybe have experienced yourself.
Yeah, I might start us off, Louis. Just you and I obviously work really closely together. And while you're in lockdown in Melbourne, I'm up here in Queensland. It was your appearance did start to become a little bit more disheveled when we were jumping on Zoom calls than your typical clean cut look. Got lots coming through here, Lou. So we've got feeling of anxiousness, headaches, being withdrawn, shortness with conversation. I think that's a good one that we can all notice if somebody doesn't engage the way they typically do. No longer doing or enjoying activities that used to give you pleasure. Stress levels, unable to focus, shortness of breath has come up a few times. It's been tired, disinterested, fatigued, and withdrawn. Lots of great examples here, everybody.
So they're really good, and they touch on sort of the physical, mental, and social elements. There's three key distinct features that really describe burnout. So we're just going to quickly touch on those as well. So they are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment. So in terms of emotional exhaustion, it's fatigue that presents itself both mentally and physically. The energy you typically have is zapped by persistent exhaustion. Depersonalization is a feeling of indifference. So in other words, you start to feel numb. For example, you may become more cynical in your inner workings or lack the ability to communicate effectively with people. And the last one, reduced personal accomplishment or performance, tends to manifest when you feel your work is insufficient and you're incapable of performing your work. For example, you may lose pleasure in work that you previously got joy from. Your usual creativity may wane and it can become harder to concentrate. Thanks everybody for your input. That was excellent.
So which one of those jumped out to you, Louis, I guess, in reflection of going through that lockdown? Was there anything that became more apparent?
When I read through this, it was the depersonalization that really stood out to me, that is separated just from, I guess, from fatigue, from feeling fatigued into that burnout phase, was the lack of feeling towards other individuals and a lack of finding joy in life because everything just became so monotonous in that quite intense lockdown. So I think reflecting back on that, the depersonalization was definitely something that stood out to me. So there's 6 identified key causes of burnout in the workplace. The burnout is not simply a result of working long hours or juggling too many tasks, though those both play a role. In their 1997 book, Christina Maslach and Michael P. Lita of the University of California at Berkeley and Arcadia University respectively identified 6 key areas where you could experience imbalances that lead to burnout. The number 1 is workload. When you have a workload that matches your capacity, you can effectively get your work done, have opportunities for rest and recovery, and find time for professional growth and development. When you chronically feel overloaded, these opportunities to restore balance don't exist. To address the stress of your workload, assess how well you're doing in key areas, planning your workload, prioritizing your work, delegating tasks, saying no, and letting go of perfectionism. If you haven't been doing one or more of these things, try to make progress in one of these areas and see how you feel. For many individuals, especially those determined on pleasing others, some proactive effort on reducing their workload can significantly reduce the feelings of burnout and provide some space to rest. The second is a perceived lack of control. Feeling like you lack autonomy, access to resources, and a say in decisions that impact your professional life can take a toll on your well-being. If you find yourself feeling out of control, step back and ask yourself, what exactly is it causing me to feel like this? For instance, does your boss contact you at all hours of the day and night and make you feel like you need to always be on call? Are there priorities within your workplace constantly shifting and can you never get ahead? Or do you simply not have enough predictability in terms of your physical or people resources to effectively perform your job? Then ask yourself, what can you do to shift this situation? Is it possible to discuss this issue with your boss to establish better boundaries and not respond to messages 24/7? Could you come to an agreement that can, with certain priorities that will remain constant? Or could you have more resources if you communicated about what you needed? Once you've considered these areas, you can see what else you can do to influence your environment versus what won't change no matter what you do or say. The third element identified by the researchers was reward. If the extrinsic and intrinsic rewards of your job don't match the amount of effort and time you put into them, you're likely to feel the investment is not worth the payoff. In these instances, you may want to look within and determine exactly what you need to feel to be properly appreciated. For example, perhaps you need to ask for a raise or a promotion. Maybe you need more positive feedback or face time with your boss. Or perhaps you need to take advantage of the rewards that you've already accrued, such as the annual leave that you've built up during that busy period in the office. Experiment to see which rewards would make you feel like doing what you're doing worthwhile, and see whether there is an opportunity to receive more of these types of rewards with your current work environment. The fourth is community. So who do you work around you? Who works around you? How supportive and trusting are those relationships? In many cases, you can't choose your colleagues and clients, but you can improve the dynamic. It could be as simple as taking the time to ask others how their day is going and really listening, or sending an email to someone to let them know that you appreciated their presentation, or choosing to communicate something difficult in a respectful, non-judgmental way. Burnout can be contagious. So to elevate the individual engagement, you must shift the morale of the group. If you found that once you've done all you can, others can't improve or don't want to improve their relationships, then you may want to consider a change. Number 5 is fairness. So think about whether you believe that you receive fair and equitable treatment. For example, do you get acknowledged for your contributions, or do others get praised for their work? Does someone else get regular deadline extensions or access to additional resources when you don't? If you feel like there's a lack of fairness exacerbates your burnout, start by speaking up. Sometimes individuals are unaware of their biases and won't take action until you ask for what you want. You can request to be mentioned as a contributor, to give part of a presentation, or to ask for additional time and resources. And the last one is values mismatch. If you highly value something that your company does not, your motivation to work hard and persevere can significantly drop. Ideals and motivations tend to be deeply ingrained in individuals and organizations. When you're assessing the element of burnout, you'll need to think carefully about how it is important to match your values with those of your organization. Look around you and ask yourself, how does my boss, how does my team, how does my organization make decisions and invest resources? Do I feel good about those underlying motivations? Do they seem open to change? If you have strongly held values and those with the influence in your organization differ from yours, you may need to look for more congruent opportunity.
All right, everybody, with those factors in mind, just want everybody to share what causes the most impact to you. So it'll be really interesting. We've got a pretty dynamic group from different workplaces in here. So it'd be great to see what comes out on top. So again, jump into Menti. If you're unable to jump into Menti, maybe just put in the chat the number one impact for yourself.
So I think we were talking yesterday, Josh, and you said that these are quite similar to a lot of other psychosocial risk factors in terms of how they impact employee well-being.
Well, yeah, they come from a different body of research, but ultimately, yeah, they align with the psychosocial risk factors. And it's one of those things where you can have all the fruit bowls and all the yoga classes in the world, but if you don't feel valued in the workplace, you've got too much work to do, and it doesn't align with your own moral compass, it's going to be very hard to go into work every day and be rewarded for that as well. So we've got plenty coming through. Workload and perceived lack of control are coming up at the top. Bit of a musical chairs at the moment. We'll give it a couple of seconds.
There's some really interesting research around perceived lack of control and heart health. People particularly who have a higher, greater control over their life, higher autonomy, typically have a better cardiovascular risk factor than people who lack the control to make decisions in their life, thinking like middle management, these kind of particular roles.
Yeah, that's right. That's the Birmingham Heart Study, something along those lines.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so the assumption was that the senior leaders would have higher prevalence of heart disease risk than their direct reports and then follow-on staff, but they actually found the opposite. They found the people in the middle of the organisation that both reported to senior leaders, but then had a team, found they had the least level of control and higher risk. So pretty alarming. So we always do push, like, think about what is inside your locus of control. You're not going to be able to influence everything in the workday, but you can influence some things, and particularly outside of work as well.
The two big ones we've had there is workload and perceived lack of control. Then reward coming in number 3, values, mismatch, fairness, and community.
Yeah, not a big surprise there. With all the organizations we work with, one of the biggest concerns is always the workload as well, because people are, I mean, I think it was one of the first questions we asked, it was that the busyness was one of the biggest stresses. People are just getting busier, the work days are getting longer, and that has an impact on our own health and well-being. So this is the big question I really wanted to get to in today's session. Lou, I think all the background information on burnout is really important, looking at the different factors that contribute to burnout. And now let's talk about the action side of things. What can we all do to support ourselves and support others? So a really proactive way to work through this is utilising your one-on-ones to the best of your ability. So I'd love everybody to think about, if you're a team leader or a staff member, how can you discuss the risk of burnout or the risk of those factors in your next one-on-one meetings, or what questions are you going to ask? There's definitely 2 ways to go about it. So first respond
with an example, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. So if, well, you and I, we do meet on a regular basis. A really good example is actually starting the meeting off not with the formal agenda of what items have you ticked through and what have you done, but just more of a check-in. What have you been up to, Louis? How's your family going? And then moving into more of the structure, but then ultimately asking quite directly, are you comfortable with your current workload? Do you find you've have enough time to move through these things? Because quite often, if I just ask Louis how he's going with everything, he's going to be like, yeah, not too bad, pretty good. It's a pretty Australian way to address things. So we do need to be quite specific in our questions that we ask. Do you feel like you have enough resources to support the completion of X? I think that's what's coming up through the chats in here as well. So communication, asking honestly and openly, asking what support do you need for the coming week ahead? Great one. Bring it up early and don't wait. That's right. While working internally very closely with injury management teams and ER teams, quite often the relationship breakdown with the manager and employee could have been prevented if they were having regular and meaningful one-on-ones rather than leaving it until the point where it has to become does become a performance management conversation. Really great responses in that one, actually.
So while some work environments may be especially grinding, such as the medical profession or law enforcement, anyone who's running out of gas can take steps to alleviate the effects of burnout and, if necessary, reevaluate their work life. To counter burnout, having a sense of purpose, having impact on others, or feeling as if one is making the world a better place are often valuable. Meaningfulness can counteract the negative aspects of the job. Other motivators include autonomy, as well as a good hard challenge. Your first point of call should be to self-assess the 6 causes that we identified before, and then have a meaningful conversation with your manager about which ones you've identified as a particular concern. Beyond addressing the 6 causes, you need to consider the following. So mental breaks. We sometimes feel unable to stop. We check emails in line for a coffee. We type notes on the flight back from the business meeting. While it can seem essential that you have to be busy to keep pushing through the workload, it's vital to take small breaks. Use spare time to read a book, listen to music, talk to a friend, or run through some breathing exercises. Taking time out for yourself is crucial to your well-being and ultimately benefit your performance. From a physical perspective, stress and tension take their toll on the body. You may notice tight shoulders or headaches. Learn to recognize the times when you start to feel stressed and how your body feels. When you do, find a moment, take some slow, deep breaths or go for a walk. Not only is exercise good for your physical health, but it also can give you an emotional boost. If you stretch for time, you don't need to spend hours in the gym. Mini workouts and short walks are convenient ways to make exercise a daily habit and is shown to significantly reduce stress. Make sure you practice good sleep habits. So our bodies need time to rest and reset, which is why healthy sleep habits are essential for our well-being. According to the National Sleep Foundation, avoid caffeine before bedtime, establish a relaxing bedtime ritual, and ban smartphones from the bedroom can help to improve your sleep hygiene. Identify your early warning signs. So ideally, you want to recognize when you shift from stage 1 into stage 2 or beyond. When doing so, notice the signs and enact a burnout response plan. Review your 6 causes in the workplace and prioritize your well-being and discuss your workload with your manager. Finally, ask for help. During stressful times, it's important to reach out for help. If asking for assistance feels difficult, consider developing a self-care check-in with family and friends. So support services available to you as an employee. You have many options to explore to reduce burnout risk. If you identify yourself shifting from phase 1 into 2 or beyond, consider just having a discussion with your manager or HR to enact a plan. You may also want to discuss this with your company EAP. This is a free confidential call and can be very beneficial to discuss your concerns with a trained professional. Other lines of support could include your GP or Lifeline and Beyond Blue if you are in crisis.
We've also got lots of.
You go.
We've also got lots of resources available in your Active and Thriving app as well, specific to burnout, mental health more broadly. And then also, if you're a leader, check out the leadership tab because it does have content that can help you support mentally healthy teams as well. Based on who your EAP provider is, that'll be accessible inside the app as well on the top right-hand side on the question mark as well, if you do feel it's important for you to have a conversation with that trained professional.
Finally, just a couple of few books here if you wanted to dig into this more. So Essentialism is a great book around how you can do less but do it well. The second one is Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycles, written by 2 sisters who went through a couple of burnout episodes and they identified the science and practical strategies to reduce the risk. And the last one is Beating Burnout at Work. Really looks at team resilience and how you can improve team dynamics to reduce burnout risk across a group of people. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We're really happy with the turnout. We'll be doing this again towards the end of next month, so the last Wednesday of the month. The next topic will be on grit. So we'll be digging into grit. What is it? How do you build it? How is it important in your career and in your life? So thank you again for joining. Thank you, Josh, for co-presenting.
Thanks, everybody. And yeah, make sure that you take away a couple of key points, particularly what you can do to protect your own risk of burnout. And then just be really mindful about those signs and symptoms to identify somebody that might not be doing okay and use that as an opportunity to reach out. Have a great day, everybody.